Hello, and welcome to Empowerment in Illness, the podcast where we amplify the voices of those navigating chronic illnesses and autoimmune conditions. I am Gwen, your host. As you know, I've had the opportunity to meet great people on social media, and the podcast allows me the ability to share those people with you. Joining me today is Heather. She's living with a rare autoimmune condition, and I'm glad that she came on the show so that she can give a voice to that condition. Heather, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you, Gwen.
Can you take us back to when you first began to notice symptoms? What initially prompted you to seek medical attention?
Okay, so my story with this kind of starts before I actually had symptoms of it. What I have is HS, hidradenitis suppurativa. I think it's how it's pronounced. But I got sepsis in 2014 from a tooth infection, which that comes with a warning of people don't put off dental care. It's too important. I ended up spending 18 days in the hospital. I actually almost died. And then a few months after recovering from that, I started having symptoms of widespread joint pain, IBS, and then getting sores in my waistline, which was the HS, but we didn't know that at the time. Saw several doctors. They prescribed all kinds of medications that none of them helped. I just felt worse and worse and worse to where I got to a point where I gained over 100 pounds in about 6 months, and I just stopped. And I stopped the medicine, and I stopped going to see doctors because it was so frustrating for them to tell me, oh, you're not being clean enough. You need to lose weight or sugar. You know, that's a common thing that people with HS are told, because a lot of doctors don't know what it is. They don't. You know, so I kind of dealt with it, and it kept getting worse. And then a year ago, finally, I went and did a little research online because it just got to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore, and found out there was a name for it, found a dermatologist. And this is what I would recommend to anybody else. When you call a doctor, ask them if they know what it is, if they're familiar with it. And went to a great dermatologist who's familiar with HS, who actually made me feel heard for once.
Mm-hmm.
Finding out it actually had a name was a huge relief. Because you have so many doctors who we're supposed to trust tell you, oh, this is the problem, when they aren't educated on every condition, and they can't be. That was the biggest help, was just knowing what it was.
Exactly. Once they give it a name, it helps you live with it.
Well, it kind of helps, because with any chronic illness, you're fighting. You're constantly fighting. And to have a name of what you're fighting helps.
Exactly.
So much.
Yes.
And I had lab work that my inflammation numbers were always very high. And they're like, we don't know why. That was always the answer. They're high, we don't know why. And meanwhile, I'm every single day dealing with the pain. And with HS, it can be a very embarrassing condition. I honestly didn't say anything for a while.
Can you tell us what it is?
Yeah, so HS is an autoimmune disorder, which a lot of research has not gone into it yet because it is very rare. It's roughly about 1% of the population that deals with this. And I actually think, from talking to people, it's higher that it just goes unreported, because doctors don't know what it is. And so they don't report it as that because they're not familiar with it. But it creates oils, abscesses under the skin that are extremely painful. And then they get to a point where they drain, which that comes with embarrassment of the draining and having to use bandages. And for some people, it can carry a smell with it.
Oh, okay.
So all those things, and they, like, mine started in my waistline, and then I started having it under my breast, and then like on my thighs, but it can be in other places too, under the arms, in the groin area, and then as it progresses, these abscesses will tunnel under the skin. Every one of them leaves a scar. They are recurrent. They keep coming back. It's awful.
What are some of the things you do to manage it, like on a typical day?
Well, before I actually saw a doctor and got treatment, it was just a matter of when they would pop up, I would put a Band-Aid over it so it wouldn't rub against my clothing, and just kind of dealt with it. And then when it would drain, bandage it, clean it, and just go from there. And then seeing a doctor, their first course of action always is antibiotics. That ended up causing me other problems and causing my IBS to flare up. So that wasn't a good treatment for me. And then there are over-the-counter things that people use. I forgot the name of the Hibiclens. A lot of people use. I tried that. It didn't work for me. People are trying so hard to find some way to treat this on their own, to the point that I've talked to people who literally are using bleach to take a bath in. That's how bad it is.
Bleach?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Literal bleach. They add to their bath water and take a bath in it. I don't recommend that, and I'm pretty sure medical professionals don't either, but that's to the extent of how bad people are not being able to find treatment for this.
Yeah.
Finally finding a doctor, and they try little less invasive things like the antibiotics, the washes and stuff. I even had a clindamycin lotion, an antibiotic lotion that kind of helped for a little bit, and then it just didn't. And then finally in September, my doctor prescribed Cosentyx, which you had touched on in your last episode of using treatments for other conditions. Well, Cosentyx is for psoriatic arthritis, and it was just approved last summer by the FDA to be used for HS. But it's not an HS treatment, but it seems to help. Well, fighting with insurance has been a nightmare. And it literally took me, my doctor, the specialty pharmacy, the manufacturer, and my employer, who had the insurance through, to talk to them to finally get where they would deny it, not cover it, to where Novartis, the manufacturer, has actually enrolled me in a program where it covered till you're covered, and I just did my first dose yesterday.
Okay. Do you by chance get any lesions in your face, or are there areas that it doesn't attack?
There are people who get it on their face. I have not. I'm in a really great private support group on Facebook, and in talking to other people who have it, there are people who do get it on their face. And with HS, they still don't really know exactly what it is that our body is attacking. They don't know if it's the hair follicles, the sweat glands. They don't know if it's just our skin overall. Mm-hmm. So that's because not enough research has been put into this condition.
Exactly.
Which creates a challenge that when we come up with new things and we're going to doctor and saying, hey, is this possibly contributed to HS? They don't know. They don't have an answer.
Yeah, it's one of those rare autoimmune diseases.
Yes, it affects roughly about 1% of the American population. Worldwide, it's less than that. So it is definitely a rare autoimmune disorder. But like I said, I think a lot of that comes from it's being misdiagnosed. Doctors used to diagnose this as acne inversa. That's what they called it. And treated it the same as acne, which obviously is not going to work.
Exactly.
But I do think a lot of people kind of just deal with it on their own, like I did for several years, because one, they're embarrassed, or two, they get told by doctors the same things over and over who are not familiar with the condition, that they just give up.
I'm almost positive most people don't know that they have it. They probably think it's just bad acne.
Correct. And I mean, like, I'm an over-the-road truck driver, so you know, you're sitting, your waistline, you're sweating there. That's what's causing this.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking it was me. There's something I'm doing wrong that's causing this. Why is this happening?
Is it really painful?
It is extremely painful. When you have an abscess, especially before it drains, it almost feels like you're being stabbed with a hot poker. That's exactly how it feels.
Oh, wow.
And then there's some relief when they drain just because the pressure is released. But then you're dealing with this drainage.
And that's the part that smells, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I haven't had that happen, but I'm a truck driver, so I'm not around a lot of people. But I know that people I've seen in the support group have told their heartbreaking stories of their employers calling them into the office talking about they need to shower more because there's a smell.
Oh.
And it's not their fault. People with this condition, we shower probably more than most people because of it. And it's not their fault, you know. And trying to explain that you have something that most people have never heard of doesn't help.
Exactly. That's unfortunate. That is so unfortunate.
Yeah. It makes things so much hard. You know, it's hard enough to fight and deal with this disease, and then on top of it, all these outside things, which you had touched on in your last episode about insurance. The people around you aren't familiar enough with it, so that just compounds the fight that you have.
Yeah, but just think about emotional distress. If you have to deal with that and your employer is telling you you have a smell, I mean, that is really unfortunate.
It is. Very. And it makes dealing with it so much worse. And with any chronic illness, it takes over your life, every day of your life.
Yes.
And then just to have that you're trying to still work a job, one piece of normalcy you're trying to hold on to, and then to have your illness basically thrown in your face like you're doing something wrong is horrible for people's mental health.
Yeah. We deal with a lot anyway. We're dealing with the pain, the stress, and then to have someone on the outside say something to you about that, that's not a good feeling.
Yeah, and that type of response, or somebody bring that up to you, makes you not want to say anything to anyone about it.
Exactly. My heart breaks for the people that has to deal with that. They're trying to use medications now from other diseases, and you end up being a lab rat because they're trying to find something that works.
Right. That's exactly what happened, because I just started the Cosentyx. I don't know if it's going to work. After all that fighting for months to get it, I don't know if it's going to work at all.
Yeah, but I'm glad you found a doctor that is going to help you and at least diagnose you with it.
Yes, and I was so relieved when I walked in her office and she said, "Oh, we know exactly what this is." I broke down in her office, because just to have somebody who finally understood, and makes you feel seen and heard is an invaluable thing.
But I have to tell you, because of you, I actually helped someone one day. This person was talking about having symptoms, and I'm just listening. And this was after I spoke to you when you were first telling me about what you had and your symptoms that you were going through. So I started asking questions, and I found out that I think this person may have exactly what you have.
Oh, wow.
But it was just because of you, just, having a conversation on TikTok, and we were talking about it. And I was listening to you because I said, "Oh, I've never heard that. I've never heard of
Mm-hmm.
that." And I remember, like, I can't pronounce the term, like the name of it, but I
We just
said,
call it HS.
exactly.
The easiest way.
And that's what I did. I went on and I Googled it, HS, like autoimmune
Mm-hmm.
HS, and then pulled it up. And so I took that to this person and I'm like, "Don't you have these symptoms? Like, don't you have that?"
Right.
And yeah. But they have never been diagnosed, right? No one has diagnosed
Mm-hmm.
anyone with anything. But I thank you for that because I
Oh,
wouldn't have
that's
known.
amazing.
I would not have known. And I'm like, look at that. Look at us.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to come on, because your episode last week, I have to tell you, Gwen, it made me cry, but it made me feel seen and heard, and it made me want to come on here and spread awareness to help someone else who is dealing with that doesn't know what it is, or they're seeing doctors and the doctors don't know what it is.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we're doing this. We do need to bring awareness to all the conditions that we have because
Yes,
there's so many, but we don't know what they are.
right.
Talking to you, I would not have known that that was something. I would have thought it was just acne. If you see that on someone's skin or psoriasis or something, some type of rash, you're going to think, "Oh, she just got some type of skin rash." And then you would blow it off.
Even the person you were talking to that didn't know what it was, that's how so many of us are. We deal with it for so long, not even knowing that it's a thing.
Yes, but this just happened to be a conversation. I've been having this issue, and I was just listening. Oh, really? Okay.
Yep. That's amazing how that happens.
Mm-hmm.
That's the good thing of community and people being able to talk to each other.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
know, that it helps so much. And that's one of the things I was going to say too for people dealing with this. One of the biggest things that's helped me is being in that private group on Facebook. It has like 88,000 people in it.
Oh, wow.
And just being part of a community. It doesn't have to be Facebook, any social media, even on TikTok, part of that chronic illness community has been amazing. And I met you through Dara.
Yes.
And the community she built, well, she doesn't have the exact same chronic illness I do. Just being able to talk to people who deal with chronic illness and chronic pain is amazing. It makes you feel seen and heard and know that you're not alone.
Yes, she and I bonded because we say pain is pain. We have the same views. I'm the type, just because I have lupus, there's somebody else that has something like HS or
Yeah,
AS. They have a condition, but in my opinion, we're all the same. Yours may have a different name, but it's still a chronic illness. And so we need to support each other. We need to bring awareness to all of our conditions.
exactly. And dealing with chronic pain, no matter what form that pain's in and how it takes over your life, it helps to talk to other people who understand that. I think with almost all autoimmune disorders, even HS, there's a fatigue factor with
Absolutely.
it, which I was actually diagnosed with prior to this chronic pain syndrome, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, things that, and I'm not discounting those conditions, but that is not what I had. You know what I mean? that was part of the not being diagnosed or misdiagnosed, or doctors just not being familiar with, oh, you have these symptoms, we'll put them here. We don't know what these other symptoms are causing, though. When you need to look at everything together, and they don't always do that. So finally finding a doctor who understood that is the biggest relief. And feeling that I have somebody else who's helping me fight it. Because that's how I feel about my doctor, my dermatologist. I feel like she helps me fight this.
That's why I'm saying I'm glad that you found someone, because we don't always find someone, especially if your condition is rare. That's hard to do.
Exactly. And my advice to people trying to find a provider is, well, with HS specifically, is ask them, do you know what HS is? Are you familiar with it? If they say no, I would just be like, okay, thank you. And I would move on and try to find a doctor who is familiar with it.
But what do you do if it's someone newly? I guess they're not diagnosed yet, but just have the symptoms, because you don't know that you have anything. You just know you have symptoms.
Right.
But there's not a name to it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been dealing with this for years, so trying to think back when it first started, because with HS you start out with just a spot here or one abscess there, then it'll go away and you're like, okay, I'm fine. And then it'll come back, but it starts out really slowly. And then as time goes on, it can progress more and progress quickly. So it took, and I think a lot of people are like me, it took it getting so bad to where we actually sought treatment for it.
Okay.
And I think that's part of the problem too, is that we wait quite a while before we actually get help. And then when we start looking, it's kind of hard to find it. But when it just starts out, the doctors don't know. We don't even know. And because HS is not a uniform condition, it presents itself in different ways for different people. A lot of people, it starts under their arms. I haven't ever had it under my arm. So I don't want to talk down on doctors, because they can't be familiar with every single condition that is out there. They just can't.
Exactly.
And then when you have an autoimmune disorder that doesn't present the same in every person, not the same thing triggers it for every person, it's so different, that makes it even harder for doctors to be educated on it.
That's why with us having autoimmune diseases, it's hard for them, because like lupus, not every lupus is the same. If it was cookie cutter, it would be different, right? They could just pinpoint it, fix it, and then move on. But
that would definitely make it easier.
Exactly.
For sure, for us and for the doctors. But I don't want people to be angry at doctors that aren't familiar with HS or their particular condition, because it's just not possible for them to know everything. It just isn't.
Yes, but the challenge becomes when they tell us it's in our head.
Yes. Even after being diagnosed with HS, seeing a new primary care doctor and telling them, hey, I was diagnosed with this, it needs to be added to my chart, because my dermatologist is a specialist. And that doctor looked me in the eye and said, HS isn't a real thing. He said, you need to cut out sugar, lose weight, and shower more. Last month, I was told this.
Oh, wow.
And that feeling, even though I knew what he was telling me was incorrect, it just makes your heart drop, that you're still not being seen and heard by every doctor you need to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, and left this off. I didn't argue with him or anything. I just said, you know what, that is not the doctor for me, and made an appointment with another one. And first thing when I walked in her office, I asked her, do you know what HS is? That's the first question I asked her, and she said yes. And it was just instant relief. And then she went on and checked, like, did blood work that no other doctor had done, checking vitamin levels for me. Come to find out, my vitamin D level is basically non-existent, which tends to go hand in hand with a lot of autoimmune disorders, actually.
Absolutely. How are you adjusting to life long term with the condition? How do you feel hopeful, or do you feel hopeful in managing it?
I will say now that I finally started on the Cosentyx, I finally feel hope that maybe something will work to make it better. I mean, there's no cure for it, and I'm not expecting the Cosentyx to be an end-all, be-all, end it, take care of it. I know that's not going to happen. But if we can lessen the flare-ups, make them less painful, make when they flare up not last as long, that to me is a win. That may sound bad to say, as I'm still dealing with it, but it's a win, but it is compared to what I've been dealing with.
It's a win, and I think we need to celebrate all wins.
That's my thing, and like I said, I just did my first dose yesterday. I have to do an injection once a week for 5 weeks, and then it'll be once a month, and went into my doctor's office to do my first injection so she could show me how to do it safely and the proper way to do this medication. And she's willing to even change it if in a couple months we don't see progress, of change it to every 2 weeks or so if needed. So she's willing to be flexible, which I think is important in a doctor that's not just, this is treatment, this is what we're doing, that's it, deal with it. Because that's not the right approach either.
Exactly.
So when you have a doctor that realizes that this condition moves and progresses differently, and she's willing to adjust as needed, that's a wonderful thing.
Your progression, is it fast or is it just really slow?
Well, I have in recent, like over the last year, it's gotten a bit worse. It's different for everyone. There are times when I have one foot, like currently right now I'm dealing with one. There are times where I'm dealing with 3 or 4 at a time. So it varies, and I never know. Like, I never know on a day when one's going to pop up. They just seem to come out of nowhere, and they grow so fast that it causes so much pain.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you think it was stress? Is that a factor?
I believe yes. There are people, from talking to other people that have this condition, there are triggers that they have found. It's a trial and error process. I mean, that's how this whole HS is. It's trial and error with treatments, with figuring out what is causing it. The whole thing is trial and error.
Yes, that's why I say we are usually lab rats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it makes it extremely challenging.
Do you have any recommendations for anyone looking to find support or resources?
Well, I would say the first part of this is keeping track of what is happening with you specifically. Because like I said, it's different for every person. And it can be hard when you finally get into a doctor to remember this happened. So it does help to keep track of that, of this happened on this day. Write it down, keep a journal, put it in your phone, just somewhere where you have it. And it allows you to look back and see how things have progressed as well. You know, I wish I had started keeping track of this in the beginning. Then I would have been able to answer your question more effectively a minute ago of the progression, because I don't remember. Like I said, the biggest thing that has helped me prior to finding a doctor who was actually knowledgeable was a private Facebook group. That was the biggest help of being able to talk to other people who have the same symptoms and deal with the same thing.
And I'm glad that you found that group. And I'm sure that there's one or someone on TikTok as well.
Like I was mentioning Dara before, even though, I haven't really talked to anybody on there that has HS, but it's just that the community of people dealing with chronic illness, like that helped to have other people to talk to who we all deal with the pain and of dealing with it on a day-to-day basis and the fatigue from it, from any autoimmune disorder. That has been very, very helpful.
Social media has been a game changer for everyone.
Because it is a very isolating thing when you have, and my family and friends, they're great, but they don't get it. They don't understand what I'm going through. And then I've had quote friends that how are you doing? And I tend to be an open person, so I'm honest about, well, I'm not doing great today, I'm having a flare. Or I've had people tell me, oh, all you do is complain. And they stop talking to me, and I'm like, it's kind of hard to talk about much else when this is what you're dealing with every single day. It consumes everything in your life. It makes you stop talking about it. And I honestly, being in that Facebook group and part of Dara's community is where I finally felt comfortable to actually say, hey, I'm dealing with this.
Yeah.
And then listening to your podcast, I can't thank you enough for your episode from last week. I really cannot tell you what it meant to me of the things that you said on there. I just felt seen and heard completely. And it's what made me want to do this, to help spread awareness and help someone else who is dealing with this, who doesn't know where to go for help. And they feel very isolated and alone, to tell them you're not.
Exactly.
And the advice I would give for seeking treatment is ask them if they're familiar with HS. Should be one of the first questions to ask the doctor. If they aren't, you could try to educate them. Some doctors aren't receptive to that. I would just say that's not the doctor for you and move on and find one that is. And a dermatologist is who is the doctor to treat this. A lot of people don't know that either. They'll go to their primary care doctor, and primary care doctors aren't knowledgeable about this.
Exactly.
And they don't know who to even refer you to for this. But a dermatologist is who treats HS specifically.
But you're right. A general practitioner, they're limited in some of the knowledge, and we can't fault them for that.
No. But the more awareness that is spread about HS specifically and other rare autoimmune disorders, the more it gets into the mainstream of doctors being at least familiar with it, that it exists.
Exactly. What does empowerment in illness mean to you?
Empowerment in illness, to me, means having a supportive community to lean on. Like I said earlier, even if we have different illnesses, we can still empathize with having a chronic illness and dealing with chronic pain and chronic fatigue. And that, to me, gives us the empowerment in our illnesses, to be able to use it to connect with other people.
Yes, I agree. I like that. Before we leave, I would like to close with a special portion of the show I call Healing Heartbeats. This is where we allow ourselves to wallow in sorrow. Give yourselves 3 minutes to laugh, cry, scream, cuss, or just sit in silence. Whatever you need to do to feel it, do it. Let the depression in for only 3 minutes. Once you've reached 3 minutes, compartmentalize it and get back to living. This is a rinse and repeat behavior. You cannot let depression take over, because when it does, it will not let go. When we hear about the passing of someone, they have the day they were born and the day they pass away. There's a dash in the middle. It's not a long line, but a short dash. That dash represents your life. Go live in spite of having a chronic illness. Don't let your condition stop you. Well, I do appreciate you coming on this show and talking about HS and giving it a voice. I know you said you felt heard, but I'm glad that you are also helping someone else to be heard. It's good to find someone who's actually dealing with the diagnosis,
Yeah.
so that they won't feel alone. So I thank you for coming on and telling us your story.
Well, thank you, Gwen, for this platform. I really appreciate it. And I like I said, I wanted to do it to help, not just to spread awareness about it, but hoping that someone hears it and is like, oh my goodness, I'm dealing with that too.
Yes. Heather, I want to take a moment to thank you for sharing your story and opening up about something as deeply as personal as living with HS. Our journey can sometimes be overwhelming, especially when dealing with a rare autoimmune disease. By sharing your story, you're bringing awareness to a rare condition and giving it a voice. Thank you for bringing awareness to hidradenitis suppurativa. To our listeners, thank you for being a part of this community. If today's episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear Heather's story. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. It helps us continue sharing these incredible stories. Until next time, continue to share your voice, find your strength, and always empower yourself through the journey. Remember, you have the strength, the heart, and the support to continue your journey. Be safe.